June 30th, 1908, the heavens split open as a ball of fire races across the sky, exploding with the force of a 10 to 15 megaton hydrogen bomb, which is about 1,000 times the impact of the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, in a sparsely inhabited region of Siberia in Russia near the Podkamena Tunguska River Basin. Seismic stations across Europe and Asia feel the explosion and the shock wave, which was so strong that it actually felt like a magnitude 5.0 earthquake, not only knocks people off their feet, but overturns boats in the river, sends fish flying out of the water, breaks windows up to 100 miles away, and circles the Earth twice. Astronomers observe a glowing haze in the upper atmosphere for several nights, so bright that people were taking pictures at midnight without a flash in Sweden and Scotland. The area of the blast is so remote, it takes another 13 years before anyone from Moscow or St. Petersburg can even get out there to look at it. Now, in all fairness, people in the cities kind of had their hands a little full with the multiple revolutions and civil war going on. But that doesn't stop Russian mineralogist Leonid Kulik. He tries for years to convince the powers that be to let him go check it out, with no luck, until he finally speaks the magic word, iron. See, in his estimation, this had to have been a meteor, which means tons of meteoric iron, a commodity in very short supply at the time and desperately needed for the Civil War effort. So with the carrot successfully dangled that this could be an iron salvage mission, in 1921 he attempts to embark on an expedition to the area in the name of the Soviet Academy of Sciences. However, the locals, the Evenki tribe, which is an indigenous tribe that lives in northern Siberia, warn him to turn back.
But winter is coming.
Winter is coming, and you don't want to go there. So Kulik and his group, frustrated, turn around and go home. But Kulik isn't one to give up, and while it takes him another 7 years to gather the resources and permissions again, in 1928 he and his group head out a second time. This time, they actually make it. Amazingly, even 19 years after the thunderous event, it's still a breathtaking sight to see. Kulik discovers a blast zone of roughly 830 square miles, about 34 miles by 43 miles. That's about 80 million charred trees completely leveled. But even more interesting is what he doesn't see, an impact crater. What there is a 5-mile wide area in the center of the blast pattern where there are burnt trees still standing and a few unburned ones mixed in. So how is that possible? Kulik makes several trips back to the region over the next several years and never finds his meteoric iron. So no meteor impact. That's when scientists kick it into high gear to find a theory that fits the evidence left behind. Now, one of the two biggest theories that surfaces immediately is that it was a meteor, but that it blew up before it could actually hit the ground, so no impact crater. Keep in mind that we are talking about a theorized hunk of rock about 200 feet in diameter. And if that's the case, you would think that there would be chunks of it everywhere, right? But none are ever found. In 1930, British meteorologist and mathematician F.J.W. Whipple suggests the second of the two main theories, and that is that the Tunguska body was actually a small comet. A comet, according to mainstream astronomy, is different from a meteor in that it's composed of dust, ice, and frozen gases, which would have been completely vaporized once it entered the Earth's atmosphere, leaving no trace. But something made primarily of water and gases would most likely burn up long before it even gets close enough to Earth to cause any damage. And believe it or not, these two camps have been battling it out since the 1930s. And in the words of German astrophysicist Wolfgang Kundt, if a group of experts cannot agree for almost 100 years, it's probably a third option. And there are lots of third options, none of them being able to explain all of the evidence that is either there or not there, except for maybe one. So let's start with Wolfgang Kundt's option. Kimberlite explosion. Wolfgang took a deep dive into the Tunguska case file in the late 1990s and decided the event was probably not celestial, but a more earthbound volcanic solution. He suggested a kimberlite ejection. In kimberlite pipes, which are a type of volcanic eruption, the eruptions eject a column of overlying material directly over the magma column, so they don't form that large above-ground cone as typical volcanoes do. Instead, a low ring forms around a bowl-shaped depression over the underground column of magma. According to his theory, 10 megatons of methane were explosively ejected, whose icy remnants in the upper atmosphere caused 3 bright nights to follow in Europe. And there are many records of there indeed being several nights following the event that were so bright it was almost like daylight. However, the methane explosion theory doesn't quite fit. First off, not only is there no evidence of the low ring and bowl-shaped depression that Wolfgang himself says should be there, but it also does not fit the eyewitness accounts of people who were close to the epicenter. One account comes from the newspaper Siberia, who quoted a resident of Kalinina about 225 miles southeast of the blast. The peasants saw to the northwest, rather high above the horizon, some strangely bright, bluish-white heavenly body, which for 10 minutes moved downwards. The body appeared as a pipe, i.e. a cylinder. The sky was cloudless. Only a small dark cloud was observed in the general direction of the bright body. It was hot and dry. As the body neared the ground, the bright body seemed to smudge and then turned into a giant billow of black smoke, and a loud knocking was heard as if large stones were falling or artillery was fired. All buildings shook. At the same time, the cloud began emitting flames of uncertain shapes. All villagers were stricken with panic and took to the streets. Women cried, thinking it was the end of the world. Semen Semenov was about 40 miles south of the explosion. According to him, at breakfast time, I was sitting by the house at Vanavera trading post, facing north. I suddenly saw that directly to the north, over on Kul's Tunguska Road, the sky split in two and fire appeared high and wide over the forest. The split in the sky grew larger and the entire northern side was covered with fire. At that moment, I became so hot that I couldn't bear it, as if my shirt were on fire. From the northern side where the fire was came strong heat. I wanted to tear my shirt and throw it down, but then the sky shut closed and a strong thump sounded, and I was thrown a few meters. I lost my senses for a moment, but then my wife ran out and led me to the house. After that, such noise came, as if rocks were falling or cannons were firing. The earth shook, and when I was on the ground, I pressed my head down, fearing rocks would smash it. When the sky opened up, hot winds raced between the houses like from cannons, which left traces on the ground like pathways, and it damaged some crops. Later, we saw that many windows were shattered, and in the barn, a part of the iron lock snapped. So according to these eyewitnesses, the event seemed to indeed come from the sky, so probably not a methane explosion. Glancing blow. Another theory is that the meteor came roaring in, but bounced off back into space. Really? I mean, I guess they ran the numbers and have a scenario of an iron asteroid around 600 feet in diameter traveling at 7 miles per second or 25,000 miles per hour, which glances off the Earth's atmosphere and returns into solar orbit. I guess. But there's no evidence for that one either. And you would think that if it got low enough to flatten 80 million trees, it would have probably shed a few rocks along the way.